Why do Satan and the demons hate the Virgin Mary so much? It goes back to the book of Genesis. It's also in the book of the Apocalypse. Today, I interview Father Chad Ripperger, an amazing Thomistic theologian, philosopher, and also an exorcist. And we go into the fall of Satan as it relates to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the test of the angels. We look at Genesis, we look at Eve, we look at the book of Revelation, and we talk about Catholic sacramentals and so many beautiful things. So I want to introduce you to part one of my interview on angels, demons, and the Blessed Virgin Mary with Father Chad Ripperger. Why does Satan hate the Virgin Mary? I've seen so much stuff online. Protestants in particular, they see Catholics talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary, her role in exorcisms, how much Satan and the demons hate the Virgin Mary. They find this ridiculous. They find it abhorrent. And I'm here with someone you all know, Father Chad Ripperger, an expert in Thomism, exorcism, so many topics. I thought it'd be really helpful to talk to you, Father Ripperger, about Our Lady and the demons, and what is the theological justification for realizing that there is this deep enmity between the Blessed Mother of God, Mary Most Holy, and the demons?
Actually, it all starts in Genesis, right? So if you actually look at the Latin version of Genesis, which I think you and I have actually talked about this, the actual normative text, the text which the Church guarantees as inerrant, is actually the Vulgate, right? It's
Yes.
not. I mean, the original languages. People say, "Oh, well, in the original Hebrew." Well, we don't even have the original Hebrew. What we have is much later. So that all being said, the Hebrew is indeterminate. It could be either the woman or the man, but it actually says in Genesis, it says ipsa, referring to she will crush your head. And so God already foretells Satan that that there's going to be a woman, basically, it's communicated to her, who's going to crush him, right? And so there's this enmity, and it's actually one of the reasons why they say that he has such a hatred for women. And that's one of exorcists actually speculate that's one of the reasons why the number of women possessed is higher than men. At least it seems to be that way. I'm not sure it is, but it seems to be that way. So anyway, so she will crush his head, and so there is an automatic, and there's an enmity set up between them. There's actually it's going to be set up in such a way that they're going to be enemies with each other, and he knows that, and so this is one of the reasons why he has such a hatred for her. The other thing is that he watched her entire life, so he knew that she did not sin, which is something the Protestants don't seem to want to sign off on. But she never sinned, which means in that itself, the Immaculate Conception itself is a remonstration to Satan that this is somebody who is not going to be subject to you through original sin, etc. And so so there's this kind of that the beginning part of it is the Immaculate Conception, and then she remains sinless, and then of course she stands at the foot of the cross and defeats him in that respect as well. And then subsequent to that, as Queen of Heaven and Earth, she basically gets to rule. And in St. Thomas talks about it in theology, we have what's called prelation, which basically means power, authority that people have based on your hierarchy or your rank in the hierarchy. And so he says that any angel in heaven or any saint in heaven actually has prelation in relationship to the demons. But in relationship to Our Lady, her coercive power, God is much more inclined and wants her to actually be more involved, which we can talk about that in the context of exorcism. He wants her to be actually much more involved. And so you tend to see that in relationship to him, she is far more powerful. And that's one of the reasons why there's this hatred. Of course, the church has always pointed us towards her for spiritual protection and things of that sort. So that's kind of an elementary kind of an introduction to it.
So the Protestants kind of bounce right back and say, well, Father, don't you know Jesus conquered Satan? You know, Jesus died on the cross. Jesus rose from the dead. Yeah. Jesus harrowed hell. Why are you giving these prerogatives to the Virgin Mary?
Well, it's actually true that he did do that, and that in fact, all of the prerogatives that she does have come mediating that, right? I mean, it's actually through Christ's passion that these things are actually applied to her. So that's one of the beauties of Blessed Duns Scotus, or is he a saint now, I guess?
But he's still a blessed. I think he's
I
still a
think he's a
blessed.
blessed,
Yeah.
still a blessed, yeah. But that basically he said, well, and actually this was actually even true of the people in the Old Testament. The sanctification in the Old Testament didn't actually come through their rituals. It came through performing the rituals in obedience to and in faith in the upcoming Messiah. And then Christ's passion, retroactively, the graces are applied backwards. And so it's the same thing that happened with Our Lady, that's why she was conceived immaculately in the beginning, is because it's applied retroactively. Well, the point being in all this is that Our Lady's efficacy in the supernatural order ultimately comes through the merits of Jesus Christ. We all recognize that, but that doesn't detract from her having these prerogatives or having these perfections. It gives her the ability to command demons at will to do whatever she so chooses. And as Queen of Heaven and Earth, that means they must obey.
Right. Yeah, I think Protestants, I used to be a Protestant. I didn't understand this, that there is a instrumental causality that,
Right.
and if you read the Old Testament, you read the New Testament, even Christ, when he heals the blind man, he puts, saliva and dirt, mud in the guy's eyes and says, go wash
Eyes.
your eyes in the pool of Siloam, I think it is. And you think to yourself, well, why didn't he just say eyes be opened or wave his hand?
Yeah.
He used this instrumentality, and you see that all through the Old Testament with Moses and the prophets, and then the New Testament, the wood of the cross, and also with people. And so,
Right.
sometimes I say to Protestants, I was like, well, Romans 16:19 says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan underneath your feet. That's more remote, of course, than the Blessed Virgin Mary, but your
Right.
connection to Jesus Christ makes you an instrument of Christ's power, his merits, his passion, everything flows through that. It flows through the martyrs, and it flows, as you've explained so beautifully, it flows to Our Lady most fully, most clearly, because she doesn't have original sin, and she is
That's
at
right.
enmity. And you ask a Protestant in Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between you and the woman. Well,
That's
if
right.
Mary sins, she's not at enmity with Satan. She serves Satan.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So she has to be immaculate.
Yeah, and actually the Protestants actually do believe in instrumental causation because they pray for other people.
Right.
Right. And that's what and as you know, as a Thomistic metaphysician, that's just the secondary causes. God loves to work through secondary causes. He loves to work through us in order to achieve these actual things. And it doesn't take away from his perfections at all, because we can't do anything without him being fully the cause in addition to us being the cause. So, and I think that because Protestants tend to, what they want to do is they want to restrict it down to things that are a little bit more theologically comfortable for them.
Right. Right. So to go back to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and you talked about God, his glory is not diminished by using instrumental causes.
That's right.
Is it the case? I think I've heard you say this before, that by defeating Satan through the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Satan's sin is pride, it's actually a greater defeat for Satan because he's being destroyed not just immediately by Jesus Christ,
That's right.
but through the instrumental work of the Virgin Mary, which is like you just got beat by a girl.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
In fact, it's he got defeated, even though she is obviously on the spiritual or the supernatural order above all of us by any stretch. But nevertheless, she, in the order of intelligent creatures, she's in the category of the lowest. And so,
Right.
and that's the reason why it's considered so humiliating to him. And I think part of it also has to do with his envy of her and her relationship to God. You know, it's funny because St. Thomas has this fantastic discussion of the fallen angels in his commentary on Peter Lombard's sentences. The stuff you see in the Summa really is a Summa. It's a contracted kind of a discussion of it. But the stuff in his commentary on Peter Lombard's sentences gets a lot more to the psychology to it. And he says something very fascinating. He says all of the angels that fell, all of the demons, when they fell both in relationship to the specificity of their sin. So they each had a specific thing that they sinned against, right? But then he said, but then they also all conspired in one thing. Okay. Now, historically, that one thing that they conspired in There are basically, if you read St. Louis Marie de Montfort, which I think kind of gives the best summation of it, is that it's a rejection of Christ in his humanity, but under the aspect of Our Lady. That was the one thing that they conspired in, is the rejection of Our Lady. And it's interesting because as an exorcist, there have been times when I've had various demons on the rope, especially the guys at the top of the heap. They tend to admit that that conspiring was a hatred and a signing off on the sin that Lucifer, because St. Louis Marie de Montfort says that Lucifer's sin was principally against Our Lady. It's against Christ, but under the aspect of Our Lady more primarily than, say, some of the other angels. Although some of them did sin against Our Lady too, as a specificity of theirs. But what's interesting is that this, when they talk, they all admit that they knew that if they were going to commit their own personal sin, that in that process they were also giving consent to the sin that Lucifer wanted to commit against Our Lady, and as a result of that, they conspired in that one thing, and that the conspiring is through ultimately against Our Lady.
Right. And I think Protestants or skeptics would say, well, that sounds interesting. That's a lot of neat theology. But then you open the New Testament, you go to Apocalypse chapter 12,
Yes.
and you see this great sign. Well, first you see the Ark of the Covenant, then you see this woman, great sign, clothed in the sun, standing on the moon. She gives birth. And you tell a Protestant, like, the book of Revelation, what is it? Like, oh, that's the future. That's all in the future. And you're like, okay, so you're saying that Jesus is going to be born again? Like born from his mother again? Like, no. So obviously chapter 12 of Revelation is talking about something besides the future. It's actually talking about the beginning, because a third of the stars fall, which are the angels. Satan opens his mouth to devour the child. So this is something primordial.
Yes, exactly. And that as you were mentioning in that particular scripture passage, it talks about how the dragon swept a third of the stars down. That's the conspiring together, going off and placing themselves under him by that process.
Right. Yeah.
And so
and later in that chapter, it says that Satan went to go make war against the woman.
That's right.
And her children that follow the faith and commandments of Jesus Christ, something like that. So we see in the New Testament, and this is hard for Protestants, that there's this war between the woman and the dragon, the serpent. And it's not just now, but there seems to be a primordial impetus to this fall that happens, before humans are walking the earth. And that this indicates that the fall of the dragon, Lucifer, Satan, the fall of the third of the angels is somehow tied to this mystical sign of a woman crowned with 12 stars giving birth to the Messiah. They hate that. Right. They hate that. And that's the occasion, if I'm correct, that's the occasion of their actual primordial fall.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And it's, I mean, those are the generalities of it. I mean, the specificity of the specificity of the sin, is not part of Revelation, other than what you said.
Right.
In sessions, though, the demons tend to be very consistent about what that actually was what that actually meant was that ultimately Lucifer was envious of two things. One, the relationship Our Lady had with our Lord, because there was going to be an intimacy that she was going to have. And if St. Louis de Montfort is correct, that the sanctification, that Our Lady's holiness exceeds all of the saints combined, then that basically means that he would always be second, right, in relationship to that. And so, and nothing he was going to be able to do was going to be able to change any of that. And so there was that's part of the specificity of the rejection. At least if you take some of the what they've said in session, and this isn't just from me, but from what other exorcists said, that there's a vitriolic envy and hatred of Our Lady and an unwillingness to ultimately to serve her, really.
Yeah. I mean, you could see, I will not serve Michael, who is like God. It kind of makes sense. Okay, Satan, the second person of the most holy Trinity, is superior to me. But to introduce a created person, Christ is not a created person, he's a divine person. to introduce a
Right.
created person that excels all the angels combined.
Bind. That's right.
And she has nostrils and hair and fingernails
That's
and
right.
all of these things.
Ex-
Like,
That's
somehow
right.
that is just infuriating to the demons.
Yes. Yeah. And what really gets him is he wanted that intimate relationship. He wanted what Our Lady had on the spiritual level, her
Mm.
spiritual perfections, her beauty, etc. And
Mm.
so it was really an envy of her interior beauty that she had. Obviously, he didn't envy her on the natural level because he was above her in the order of nature, but the supernatural part was what he just couldn't take.
Now, this sort of, I guess, touches to why he tempted the woman before Adam.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he
I mean, I
attacks.
think there's a couple of reasons. One is that that some of the fathers actually say that he went after her, after Eve, precisely because of his hatred for Our Lady. But on the other hand, he went after Eve because I think that the fathers also say because he thought she would be easier to undo, and then once she was easier to undo, then he could take out Adam.
Right. Yeah.
And part of
So,
that has to do with the fact that the actual command. I'm writing a book on this area right now. The actual command to not eat of the fruit of the tree actually went from God to Adam and then to Eve. God didn't convey it directly to Eve, so it's easier to subvert her than from, say, Adam, who heard it directly from God.
right. Now, when you go through time and you talked about, it seems that more women are possessed by demons than men, and the hatred of demons for women, but in particular, hatred of demons for the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
What do you see in exorcisms? Do they ever actually blaspheme Our Lady, and how do they speak of Our Lady, the demons?
You know, I have never seen it. And in my experience, every single case I had where there was blasphemy committed against Our Lady turned out to be a case of that the person actually wasn't possessed, that they were faking it.
Hmm.
And my experience is that they're they're first of all, they don't even like using Our Lady's name to begin with because it's
Okay.
sacred and it's holy. So the second part of it is that because of her position and stature, God will tolerate a lot of stuff in relationship to himself, but you start going after Our Lady and it's pretty short order. He's not going to tolerate that. And so they know that the retribution is too severe and too swift. So they just never talk that way, at least around me. They never have. Now, other exorcists say they have, but I still kind of question some of that. But the seasoned exorcists say, yeah, no, they actually, when they talk to her, there's not a deference, but there is a kind of a recognition of I have to mind my P's and Q's.
Right. That makes sense. Well, that was the first part of my interview with Father Chad Ripperger. We have so much more to talk about, including scripture, sacramentals, questions about the demons and Our Lady, including whether there will be a future or soon to be apparition of Our Lady during this time of confusion, crisis, both in the political realm and in the church. So if you'd like to learn more, join the New St. Thomas Institute and take our course on angels and demons. You can get it at nsti.com or click the link below. God bless and Godspeed.